Welcome to Nugget 166, and this is a continuation of our Nugget with the Forest Ranger. And if you haven't listened to Nugget 165, we recommend that you do that first.
If you're an outdoor person, New York's got a lot to offer.
It's got so much to offer.
Exactly.
Fishing, hunting
Recreation
opportunity.
wonderland.
Yeah.
And a hunting wonderland, too.
Mountains, mountain climbing, ice climbing.
What's the craziest thing you've ever come across or stumbled onto or discovered? Is there anything really, weird, like you found an airplane from 1947 that's been missing for forever?
The weirdest things are some of the people.
I guess so.
I hate
those humans.
They're unpredictable at times.
Well, that's true.
And downright scary at other times. One of the things is all different people. That's one of the skills you have to have as a police officer or a forest ranger dealing with the public. You have to be able to read people and get a feel for people and be good at
Diplomacy?
Absolutely. That's the way to be. You have to establish a rapport because most of the people you're dealing with are good people. It's the 1%. It's a very small percentage of people, and that's what we're there to protect. The majority of people from the people who would hurt them out on the state forest.
Well, I guess a lot of the good people, they just did something dumb or something not paying attention or
absolutely
goofy things.
Right.
An accident. Yeah.
Right. Well, one of the dumb things people do in my district is in Zore Valley, as I mentioned before. There's a attractive nuisance, we call it. It's a waterfall. Everybody who goes there asks, where's the waterfall? Well, the waterfall is off limits. It's on private land. And the waterfall is such that you could go on YouTube and check out Zore Valley, multiple use area, and you'll see people diving off of the cliffs into this big pool of water. And that pool is very remote. It's about 2.5 miles from a trailhead that gets a lot of use. And there's drinking and other activity there that's not conducive
to safety. So they're trespassing on the private land.
They're trespassing on private land, exactly. The water levels is unpredictable there. The watershed is such that when you get a lot of rain, the water can rise very quickly. So we've had rescues where I could actually see it coming. It's the rain. It's raining all day. The vehicles are in the parking area. There's only 1 or 2 vehicles left later in the day. And sure enough,
that's the problem.
People who got stuck on the other side of the river when the water came up. And they had no way out.
Experience here, speaking. Of the 34 years, how much has been more on this law enforcement type side? At one time, did you ever run a chainsaw and design trails or things like that?
Well, we still run a chainsaw because we have lots of forest roads that we need to access. And sometimes during a windstorm or ice storm or other situation where trees just tip out and close the road, there might be people recreating with RVs and other vehicles back there so they can't get out. We carry a chainsaw with us. We're sort of a jack of all trades.
Okay, well, that's what I was wondering.
That's what makes it fun.
Absolutely.
I thought maybe you would call out a different crew to do that.
There are our operations crew do the routine maintenance, but in an emergency situation, we'll assist with that. There was a big ice storm in the Adirondacks, and Rangers assisted utility crews and everybody else in clearing roads.
Let's move on to the firefighting aspect of your job.
Yes.
What would you like to tell us about that?
Well, I'd like to tell you that the Forest Ranger Force came into existence as a result of big wildfires that occurred in New York State in the late 1800s, early 1900s. That's our roots. I've had a lot of exciting experiences, actually, with wildland fire. Been out west on out-of-state fire 4 different times. If you recall, back in 1988, there were the big Yellowstone fires.
Yes, we've seen the ramifications of those.
Yellowstone National Park.
That's awesome.
Well, I didn't get to Yellowstone National Park. Another ranger crew did. I did get to Montana,
Big
Idaho.
Sky State.
Beautiful.
Idaho is a
Incredible.
hidden gem, is it not?
Yes.
People have no idea how gorgeous Idaho is.
Incredible. On the Payette National Forest in Idaho. And then the Malheur National Forest. Lastly, the Bridger Teton National Forest in Wyoming. And it's quite an experience on out-of-state western fire, large fire incidents.
Totally different than over here.
It's completely different. It is a big production. There's a lot involved. The camp is huge. Many, many crews. A lot of time to get to the fire, loading up on the bus, getting out to the fire, hard work at elevation. Times when you don't get back to camp and you get spiked out, where you have to stay out and you work right out in the elements away from the camp for a couple of days.
We have experienced so many fires out west in California, Idaho, Montana, Washington. We've had meetings where our motorhome and car is just covered with ash from regional fires. And we've been diverted many times because the roads have been blocked because of fires. We were going through the pass in the Sierra Nevadas between Bakersfield and Tehachapi, and there were fire trucks that were heading home from all kinds of places. And it's just awesome to see the camaraderie, but it's needed out there. Those things can travel great distances out there.
Nationwide effort, and it's especially become more of a concern, the fires, because you have something called the wildland-urban interface. Everybody's building houses in the mountains. There are no such thing as a town, and then the forest, towns and people dispersed throughout the forest.
Well, I know on in national recreation areas, people can live and have private land within those areas. Is that the same in the forest land? Where there are people that are living on forest land, right?
There's areas that the Forest Service owns outright. It's just next to the
gorgeous
forest
homes can get burned up in a hurry.
Very much so in a hurry.
And your idea is containment.
We're looking to protect the houses. They'll actually assess houses when the fire front is moving, as far as which ones are keepers, which ones could be saved and protected, and which ones they'll have to let go. And that depends a lot on what the homeowner
based on
has
what's
done
around
in
it.
area. If they've cleared, if they've made it fire safe. Actually, I have a program where they teach people how to make their homes more fire safe.
And we've seen that where there's been a big fire and all of a sudden here's this gorgeous home and it's obviously had a barrier around it and it was preserved.
So it works.
It does work.
Is everybody on sort of the same footing, on par with each other? If somebody's got 25 years of experience and somebody else is 2 years, is everybody all the same, or do y'all have different levels of things you do? Or
in that sense, I would say New York State is an exception to the rule in the sense that most states, and even within the federal government, a specialty area or a particular area of responsibility. People are firemen or fire service, wildland firefighters, and that's what they do. And within that are areas of specialties, but they put forest fires out. The search and rescue aspect is taken care of by a group of employees, and then the police function is taken care of by law enforcement officers. New York State, the Forest Ranger covers all of those areas. We're unique amongst. The last state to do that in a similar manner was Maine, but they've since split off.
Where you wear all three hats.
Where they wear all three hats. The last state that did that.
We actually have a friend who he was in one of the rare municipalities that he was a paramedic, a fireman, and a police officer. And they just rotated between, but you had to be all three. So you are fire trained, so that's when you would go out. But a lot of times out west, they just need all hands on deck. Like people going from volunteer departments and all kinds of things. A lot of times they just need...
The mass of personnel that's needed is incredible to address a large fire.
And we've seen those kind of camps you're talking about. It's massive.
It's a big employer.
They're huge.
During the summer, it employs a lot of people, a lot of businesses as well. They got to feed all these people. They have to have the equipment, the supplies to supply the suppression of the fire, the engines that respond to the fire from various fire departments. It's a big involved process.
It's a tremendous process. Just the fuel and the ability to get water. I know they go to different watering areas, lakes or ponds to obtain the water.
That's exactly the air resources that are involved and the cost of those per hour.
Right. That's crazy. We've seen the helicopters and they just drop this bucket of water. We're thinking, what good did that do?
Have you seen the planes with the fire retardant
too? Yes.
Okay.
And we've seen the mountains later where you can
red
see
or orange, whatever.
There's been crews that I've been on where we've gotten painted by the spray.
Wow. Oh, no.
We're not supposed to be close, and we weren't, but still the mist of that
it still
fire
got you.
retardant still got us.
Yeah, people have no understanding of the danger because once land has gotten wet, burned, it's much more dangerous than it was in its natural state. And then the smoke is awful.
The smoke is awful, and it'll sock in an area with smoke and cause poor quality air and affect
it stays
people with
for
respiratory
days and weeks.
problems. Yes, it does.
It just stays there.
Oh, another interesting area of fire control that speaks to prevention, such as the Fire Safe program, is prescribed fire. You've probably heard of prescribed fire.
Right.
We do that in New York State, and we have to manage the prescribed fire so that the smoke doesn't blow and close down highways or affect neighborhoods.
Explain what a prescribed fire is. We know what they are because we've seen it at many national parks out west. So can you tell us just briefly what that means?
Wildland fire is fire that's not under control. Prescribed fire is fire that is controlled and is set by wildland fire personnel as a prescription to accomplish an objective. So the objective might be to improve wildlife habitat. It may be to prevent a larger wildland fire from occurring there when one occurs.
Because it's already been burned.
Because it's already been
Right.
burned. A lot of the land is under a wildfire regimen. It's naturally wild. It takes a wildfire. It's used to, adapted to wildfire, moving through that. When you delay or prevent a fire from occurring, you can have a larger fire. So prescribed fire occurs to thin out those fuels, to lessen the fuel load on a given area. And it's also done to improve wildlife habitat. A couple of areas east of here in Steuben County that are burned to, believe it or not, to promote rattlesnake habitat, to give the rattlesnakes, and to protect a very rare ecosystem that is the prairie grass, warm season grass ecosystem. The oak openings, it's an ecosystem that the American Indians actually promoted by their burning out of the undergrowth to improve the wildland habitat for deer and other foraging species.
Because otherwise it would get overgrown.
It would
and taken over and
succession would take place.
Right. Oh, I haven't heard that word in a while.
Succession would take place. They actually protected New York State up at Rush Oak openings north towards Rochester. They actually identified a few remaining patches of wild summer grasses that were there. They preserved what was the prairie. This was the transition zone here to the west from the eastern forests to the prairie. And so those prairie grasses were a remnant. They identified the natural grasses there. They collected the seeds from that through thinning. They started instituting prescribed burning each and every year. They promoted the development of those prairie grasses to restore that ecosystem.
And people don't realize that as they travel around. I wish they could appreciate what people like you do and what other people that specialize in maintaining these natural habitats. It's not just all a wacko thing. It's part of our history. It's part of our nation. It's part of the culture that we need to maintain as America.
I wish more people could see the value in that as you do.
I do.
People take things for granted. Things do matter.
They do
really
matter.
do.
The diversity, protecting what God has created is important.
Well, like was mentioned, we've been out west many, many times, and we've seen tons of fires out that direction. I don't think of New York State as a wildfire type of a place. How often do things happen here in regards to that?
That's great you bring that up, Steve, because to speak to that, New York State has the Adirondacks, which is also referred to as the asbestos woods, because there's so much rain, there's snow cover. It's hard to get it to burn.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah.
For the most part. But there's areas within the Adirondacks, the high peaks, where the soil's thinner and the vegetation community up on those mountains are more fire prone. And there's areas of New York State that are downright very prone to fire and need fire to reproduce and to propagate that type of ecosystem. We have a pine barrens ecosystem up near Albany, the state capital, as well as all of Long Island at one time was primarily pitch pine. So the pitch pine ecosystem occurs in those two areas predominantly, and prescribed fire is used there as well to protect that ecosystem. Those species of trees have serotinous cones, which means the cones need fire in order to open up and deposit their seeds to propagate and to continue those trees.
Any wildfires, are they typically, is there like half and half, or is there a reason? I would assume lightning would be one of the ignition items, and then perhaps just campfires that get out of control?
In the western area of the United States, they record all the lightning strikes. There's a lot more fires than we hear about, and most of them don't get big because they send in smoke jumpers or an engine crew or hotshot crews that will go and put the fires out while they're still small. But there's a lot of lightning, dry lightning.
Yes.
We were in lava beds in Northern California, and we were in one of the ice caves, and we heard this enormous thunder boom, and we're like, what was that? And when we crawled out of the cave, we looked out, and that's what had happened. It was a lightning strike that had started the fire.
So you saw it right from the beginning?
Yes.
What did you do?
We actually called it in.
Wow.
Yes, because to have heard it under the earth when that lightning hit the ground, it was incredible.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
Incredible. We're going to stop right here and pick up in our next nugget. Thank you.